Brio English podcast.
Laugh, learn, love English. I want you to think about something you gave up on, not something small, something that actually mattered to you. A business idea, a creative project, a fitness goal, learning something new, a relationship you stopped investing in, something you started with real, genuine excitement, and then at some point, you stopped. You quit. You moved on. And maybe you told yourself the timing wasn't right, or it wasn't working, or something else needed your attention. But deep down, you wonder sometimes, what if you had kept going just a little longer?
I have so many of those. Things I started with complete conviction that I was going to see through, and then somewhere in the middle I just stopped. And the worst ones are the ones where I can see now exactly where I was when I quit, and how close I actually was to something real. That's a painful thing to sit with.
And here's the thing that makes it even harder. Research on persistence, on the psychology of quitting, consistently shows something that most people never find out. The moment when giving up feels most rational, most justified, most inevitable, is almost always the moment just before a breakthrough. The point where everything feels hardest, most uncertain, most pointless, is statistically the point closest to when things start to work.
So the feeling that it's not working, that feeling itself, is actually a signal that you're close.
In many cases, yes, there's a pattern that repeats across almost every meaningful human endeavor. A period of excitement and momentum at the start, then a long, difficult middle where progress slows, doubt grows, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems to widen rather than narrow. And then, for the people who stay, a breakthrough. But most people never reach the breakthrough, because they quit in the middle. Specifically, they quit at the hardest point in the middle, which is also the point closest to the breakthrough.
That's one of the most important and most heartbreaking things I've heard. All those people, all those abandoned projects and dreams, quit at the worst possible moment, right before things turned.
Today we're going into exactly why this happens, the psychology of quitting, what the middle actually feels like and why it's designed to make you stop, and the specific mindset shifts that separate the people who break through from the ones who don't. I'm Alex, this is Maya, this is Brio English podcast. Let's go.
Before we get into the psychology, can you describe what this middle period actually looks and feels like? Because I think a lot of people are in it right now, without realising that's what it is.
The author Seth Godin wrote a book called The Dip, which describes this phenomenon precisely. Every worthwhile endeavor passes through a period he calls the dip. It's the long stretch between the initial excitement of beginning and the rewards that come from mastery or success. And the dip is characterized by very specific feelings. Progress feels slow or invisible. The gap between your current reality and your goal feels wider than when you started. Other things start to look more attractive. Your reasons for starting feel less compelling than they did, and the effort required starts to feel disproportionate to the results you're getting.
Maya, that description is so precise, it's uncomfortable. I'm in that exact place with something in my life right now. And you're right, every single one of those feelings is present. The invisible progress, the widening gap, the attractive alternatives, the disproportionate effort.
And here's what makes the dip so dangerous. All of those feelings are completely real. They're not irrational. Progress genuinely does slow in the middle. The gap genuinely does feel wider. The effort genuinely is harder than it was at the beginning. The dip doesn't feel hard because you're weak or losing or wrong. It feels hard because it is hard. That's the point. The dip is the filter that separates the people who get the reward from the people who don't.
So it's designed to be hard. The difficulty isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that you're in exactly the place every person who ever achieved something meaningful had to pass through.
Exactly. And the people who break through are not necessarily more talented, more fortunate, or more deserving than the people who quit. They simply understood what was happening. They recognized the dip for what it was, a temporary period of maximum difficulty immediately preceding the point where things start to change, and they stayed. That understanding, Knowing you're in the dip rather than thinking you're in a dead end is sometimes the only difference between breakthrough and abandonment.
So awareness itself is protective. If you know the dip exists, you're less likely to be defeated by it.
Completely. Because your interpretation of the difficulty changes. Instead of thinking this is hard, therefore it's not working, you think this is hard, therefore I must be close. Same experience, completely different meaning, and meaning determines whether you continue or stop.
This is hard, therefore I must be close. I want to write that on my wall.
Now let's go deeper into the neuroscience, because quitting in the dip isn't weakness. It's actually your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Understanding this changes everything about how you respond to the urge to quit.
Before we go further, if this kind of conversation is useful to you, subscribing means you get it every Monday and Thursday. Now, why is the brain designed to make us quit?
Your brain has one primary job that overrides almost everything else: keep you safe and conserve energy. It is not designed to help you achieve long-term goals. It is designed to protect you from immediate threats and avoid unnecessary expenditure of resources. And from your brain's perspective, continuing to invest effort in something that isn't producing visible results is exactly the kind of irrational energy expenditure it wants to stop.
So the brain doesn't understand long-term investment. It only sees the immediate equation: effort going in, no results coming out, and it sends the signal to stop.
Exactly. And it uses very specific mechanisms to make you stop. First, it amplifies doubt. In the dip, your brain takes every piece of contradictory evidence, every slow day, every failure, every person who questions what you're doing, and makes it feel enormous, while simultaneously minimizing the evidence that things are working. You genuinely can't see the progress you've made because your brain is filtering it out.
That explains why progress in the dip feels invisible even when it isn't. The brain is literally hiding it from you.
Second mechanism. It makes alternatives look artificially attractive. In the dip, every other path starts to look easier and more promising than the one you're on. This is the brain offering you an exit route, the new business idea that seems perfect, the different fitness approach that will definitely work this time, the fresh start that will be better than finishing what you started. All of these feel compelling in the dip. Almost none of them are actually better. They're just new, which means they haven't reached their own dip yet.
Oh, that's such an important insight. The new thing looks better because it hasn't become hard yet, but it will. Every meaningful thing has a dip. You're not escaping difficulty by starting something new. You're just resetting to the beginning of a new difficulty cycle.
That's exactly it. And the people who jump from new thing to new thing, always excited at the start, always quitting in the middle, never reach the breakthrough that only comes from going through the dip. They experience the excitement of starting repeatedly, but never the reward of finishing. And over time, the starting excitement gets shorter and the dips feel bigger, because the brain learns that nothing leads anywhere, and that learned helplessness is one of the most devastating things that can happen to a person's potential.
That's a devastating description of so many people I know, including versions of myself at different points in my life. The serial starter who never becomes a finisher, always beginning, never breaking through.
And the way out of that pattern is not trying harder or being more disciplined. It's understanding the dip, recognizing it when you're in it, and making a deliberate, informed choice about whether to stay or go, rather than letting the brain's discomfort response make that choice for you. Now, and this is important, I'm not saying never quit anything. That would be terrible advice. Some things genuinely should be abandoned. Some paths genuinely don't lead anywhere. Some investments genuinely are not worth continuing. The skill is not persisting through everything blindly. The skill is knowing the difference between a dip worth pushing through and a dead end worth leaving.
How do you tell the difference? Because in the middle of the dip, everything feels like a dead end.
3 questions. First, is the destination still worth it? Not whether the journey is hard right now, but whether the outcome you're working towards still genuinely matters to you. If you reached it, would it be worth everything you've invested and more? If yes, you're in a dip worth pushing through. If the destination itself has lost its meaning, that's different information.
Second question,
Is there actual evidence of progress, even slow progress? Not feelings of progress, actual measurable movement toward the goal, however incremental. In a genuine dip, there is usually some progress. Small, hard to see, easily dismissed, but real. In a true dead end, there is genuinely no movement regardless of effort. If you can find any evidence of progress, however small, you're likely in a dip, not a dead end.
third,
Are you wanting to quit because it's not working, or because it's hard? These feel identical from the inside, but they're completely different situations. Not working means the approach is fundamentally flawed, and no amount of effort will change the trajectory. Hard means the work is difficult, but the trajectory is sound. Most people who quit in the dip are quitting because it's hard. They interpret the hardness as evidence of failure. But hardness and failure are not the same thing. In fact, the hardest periods are often the periods of most significant underlying progress, even when that progress is invisible on the surface.
is it not working, or is it just hard? That question alone could change so many decisions. Because most of the time when I've quit something, honestly, it was hard, not broken. I confused the two.
Most people do, because the brain presents them as the same feeling. The discomfort of genuine failure and the discomfort of necessary difficulty feel almost identical from the inside. Distinguishing between them requires stepping outside the immediate emotional experience and asking the question rationally. Not, how do I feel right now? But, what does the evidence actually show? Now the practical part. The people who break through the dip and reach what's on the other side. What do they actually do differently? Because it's not just mindset. There are specific behaviours that make the difference.
First behaviour, what is it?
They change their measurement of progress. In the early stages of anything, progress is visible and motivating. You can see improvement. You can feel momentum. But in the dip, surface-level progress slows or stops. The people who break through shift what they measure. Instead of measuring results, which slow down in the dip, they measure inputs, the effort going in, the consistency of showing up, the number of times they chose to continue when quitting felt easier. Progress measured in inputs rather than outputs is always available, even when results are invisible.
So instead of measuring how far they've come, they measure how consistently they've shown up. And showing up consistently in the dip is itself the achievement, regardless of visible results.
Exactly. Second behavior, they shrink the time horizon. In the dip, looking at the full distance to the goal is demoralizing. The gap is too large. The timeline is too long. The people who get through don't look at the finish line. They look at today. Can I do this today? Not for the next year. Not until I reach the goal. Just today. The commitment shrinks from the entire journey to the next step. And the next step is always manageable even when the full journey feels impossible.
Not the finish line. Just today. That's such a simple reframe, but it's completely different psychologically. The finish line can feel impossibly far. Today is always reachable.
Third behavior, they talk to the right people. In the dip, the people around you can either pull you through or pull you out. People who have never pushed through a dip themselves will often validate your desire to quit, because they genuinely believe quitting is reasonable and they care about your comfort. People who have been through a dip and come out the other side will tell you the truth. It gets better. Keep going. This is the hardest part. Deliberately seeking out those voices in the dip changes what you believe is possible.
Fourth behaviour?
They remind themselves why they started, not in a vague motivational way, but specifically and concretely. They go back to the original decision. What did they see then that they can't see now? What were they moving toward? What would it mean to reach it? The dip creates tunnel vision. You can only see the difficulty immediately in front of you. Deliberately reconnecting with the original vision, the reason the destination mattered, breaks that tunnel vision and restores perspective.
And fifth, what is the fifth behaviour?
They redefine what success looks like in the dip. In the early stages, success looks like results. In the dip, success looks like continuing, not winning, not achieving, just not quitting on this particular day. Lowering the definition of success to continuing means you can succeed every single day regardless of results. And that daily experience of succeeding, even at the small thing of just showing up again, builds the momentum that eventually carries you through. Now, the English language section. Because English has some of the most powerful and precise vocabulary in the world for describing persistence, difficulty, and breakthrough. And knowing these words doesn't just help you describe the experience, it helps you think about it more clearly.
First word, resilience. This is everywhere in English right now, but what does it actually mean precisely?
Resilience comes from the Latin resilire, meaning to spring back. It's the capacity to recover from difficulty, not to avoid difficulty, to recover from it. Resilience is not about being unaffected by hard times. It's about being affected, genuinely, and then finding your way back. Someone who never struggles has never tested their resilience. Someone who struggles and recovers has built it.
Second, grit. This word has had a fascinating revival in recent years, largely through the psychologist Angela Duckworth's research. What does grit mean precisely?
Duckworth defines grit as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. The emphasis on long-term is critical. Grit is not just pushing through a single hard moment. It's continuing to show up for something over months and years, even when the results are slow and the path is unclear. Duckworth's research found that grit, not talent, not intelligence, not opportunity, was the single strongest predictor of achievement across virtually every domain she studied. People with grit outperformed people with talent who lacked it consistently.
Third, tenacity. How is this different from grit?
Tenacity is more about grip, holding on tightly and not letting go under pressure. It's the quality of refusing to release something you're committed to, even when external forces are pushing you to let go. Grit is about the long haul, continuing over time. Tenacity is about the grip, not letting go under immediate pressure. Both are needed in the dip. Grit keeps you going week after week. Tenacity keeps you holding on when a specific moment of maximum pressure arrives.
And endurance, which has a slightly different flavour again.
Endurance is about capacity to sustain effort over time despite pain or discomfort. It comes from athletic language originally, the ability to keep running when your body wants to stop. In everyday English, to endure something means to experience it fully, all its difficulty and discomfort, without being destroyed by it. She endured a very difficult year, means she went through something genuinely hard and came through it. Endurance implies both the difficulty and the survival. I want to share something that I think is important and rarely talked about. The stories we hear about success are almost always told from the other side of the breakthrough. The person who became successful talks about the hard times in retrospect, after they knew it worked out, which makes those hard times sound purposeful and temporary in a way they didn't feel at the time.
Because when you're in the dip, you don't know it's a dip. You don't know there's a breakthrough coming. You just know it's hard and getting harder and the results aren't there.
Exactly. Every person who ever built something meaningful was, at some point, in exactly the same position as someone who quit. The same doubt, the same lack of visible results, the same compelling reasons to stop. The only difference is what happened next. And what happened next was often not heroic or dramatic. It was simply, they continued. Not because they knew it would work, but because they decided the destination was worth the uncertainty of the journey.
They didn't know it would work. They just decided to keep going anyway. That's not certainty, that's courage. And it's available to anyone.
Completely available to anyone, right now. In whatever they're building, whatever they're learning, whatever they're working toward. The dip is not permanent. The only way to find out what's on the other side is to stay.
Listener challenge. And this one is deeply personal. Tell us.
This week, identify one thing in your life right now that you're in the dip with. Something you started with real intention that has become hard and slow and uncertain. Ask yourself the 3 questions. Is the destination still worth it? Is there any evidence of progress, however small? And is it hard, or is it actually broken? Answer those questions honestly.
And then make a deliberate, informed decision. Not an emotional one. Not one made in the middle of the hardest moment. A clear-eyed decision about whether this is a dip worth staying in or a genuine dead end worth leaving. Both are valid, but make the choice consciously. Not by default, not by drift, by decision.
And share in the comments what you're in the dip with right now. You don't have to share the details, just, I'm in the dip with something and I'm choosing to stay. Or, I identified a dead end and I'm choosing to leave it wisely. Either way, the awareness itself is the first step. We read every comment. We're in your corner. Listener comments and the responses to episode 13's disagreement challenge have been extraordinary.
Read them.
Alex. First comment, from a listener in India. I see this quite differently in a meeting with my director for the first time in my career. I have always just agreed with everything my director says because I was afraid. This time I disagreed respectfully using the phrase from the episode. My director paused, then said, "Actually, tell me more about that." We had a 30-minute conversation. At the end, he implemented my suggestion. My colleague told me afterwards that nobody had ever challenged the director like that and survived. I didn't just survive, I was listened to.
Nobody had ever challenged the director and survived. And this listener not only survived, but was listened to and implemented. That is what respectful disagreement looks like in real professional life. That person's career changed in that meeting. We are so genuinely proud.
Alex. Second comment, from a listener in Brazil. I had the disagreement I had been avoiding for 2 years with my business partner. 2 years. I used acknowledge before you challenge and help me understand. The conversation lasted 3 hours. We both cried. We found out we had been disagreeing about something we actually both wanted. We just had different ideas about how to get there. We are still partners. The business is better. 2 years of avoidance ended in 3 hours of honest conversation.
2 years of avoidance, 3 hours of honest conversation, and they discovered they both wanted the same thing. The disagreement was about method, not destination. That happens so often. People avoid the conversation and the gap grows, when the honest conversation would reveal they were actually aligned all along. That story is going to stay with me.
And one more, from a listener in the Philippines. I wonder if we are defining this differently with my teenage daughter, who I have been arguing with about her future for months. I asked her what success means to her. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't think I know yet." And I realized I had been arguing about a destination neither of us had properly defined. We stopped arguing. We started talking. She is 17 and figuring it out. So am I. We're figuring it out together now.
She is 17 and figuring it out. So am I. We're figuring it out together now, a parent and a child, finding each other through one honest question. That is what language can do when it's used with genuine care. Thank you for sharing that with us.
And that is episode 14 of Brio English Podcast.
Everything we covered today. The dip, the valley every worthwhile thing passes through. Why your brain is designed to make you quit, and why that's not weakness. The difference between a dip worth staying in and a dead end worth leaving. The 3 questions. Is the destination worth it? Is there any evidence of progress? Is it hard or is it broken? The 5 behaviours of people who break through, and the English vocabulary of persistence, resilience, grit, tenacity, endurance.
Your challenge. Identify your dip. Ask the 3 questions. Make a conscious decision. Share it in the comments. We're reading every single one.
Next episode, we're exploring something that affects every single person who has ever wanted more from their life, but felt held back by something they couldn't quite name. What your relationship with money reveals about how you think, and why changing the way you talk about money might be the most important thing you ever do.
That episode completely changed how I think about something I deal with every single day. Until next week, stay in your dip. The breakthrough is closer than you think. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.